Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining. We appreciate everybody joining the Cogent Academy event today. My name is Brandon Box, and I have the pleasure of working with over 200 great associates at Cogent Bank. We started this program really as an opportunity to add educational value to our customers and small businesses in the community. In a world where so many banks have a bad reputation, we're trying to bring educational content that allows our clients and community leaders to perform better operationally and hopefully financially as they run their businesses. We think the topic of cybersecurity really is timely and valuable as it impacts all of us. And a little data from the Federal Trade Commission recently came out. Last year in 2023, there was over 5.4 million reported cases of cybersecurity to the government and over 10 billion in financial losses. So it couldn't be a more relevant topic to all of us. Of the different categories of cybersecurity, identity theft was the most prevalent, followed by imposter scams and credit bureau scams. So these things all impact not only individuals, but also businesses and their banking relationship. And prevention really starts with understanding the schemes and the cons that these criminals are using, as well as ways to be proactive to prevent this happening to your business. So we hope that this event is educational to all of you and it helps you run your businesses more efficiently. A couple of quick housekeeping items. If you could please keep your computers on mute throughout the presentation, that will allow for a better experience both to the other listeners as well as our presenters. And at the end of this presentation, we will email a full copy to everybody with a link so they can watch the video or share it with their colleagues. And we will not take questions at this presentation, but certainly happy to answer questions after the fact. If anyone would like to email questions to their point of contact at Cogent Bank, we'll do our best to follow up with those individually, and we can engage the speakers as necessary if their help is needed. So please make sure to take advantage of that if there's any follow-up questions. So with that, I'm proud to introduce a couple of our speakers. Our first speaker is going to be Brian Bankston, and Brian is an independent technology consultant with Bankston Consulting. Brian has spent more than 30 years working with banks on their information technology and cybersecurity. He has worked both domestically and internationally, both for banks and bank vendors, so he's seen both sides of what a client interacts with. He has served as the Chief Technology Officer for 2 separate banks and has served on the Board of Directors of the Florida Technology Council in Tallahassee. Brian has a computer science degree from the University of Missouri and is a graduate of the Certified Community Bank Information Technology Officers Program. Our second speaker is Ms. Tracy Smith. Tracy is the Senior Vice President and Director of Treasury Management for Cogent Bank. She has over 20 years of banking experience, all of which has been involved with treasury management. She started her career with First Union, then Wachovia, and spent the majority of her career with C&L Bank, where she worked in various leadership roles within treasury management. Tracy joined Cogent Bank in 2018 and was one of our very first employees. Tracy has a BA in psychology from the University of Central Florida, which comes in handy when she has to deal with me, and has founded numerous nonprofits in the Orlando area, including the Athena Women's Leadership Council of Central Florida. So we're excited to have these 2 presenters take lead for us today. Before we hand it over to Brian, I'll just run through quickly our agenda for today. Brian's going to talk first, and he's going to speak on identity theft, cyber attacks, how mobile devices have really changed the landscape in this arena, and what you can do to defend against it. And Tracy is going to follow up with real-world case studies, things that we've seen on a daily basis here at Cogent on how our clients are being impacted by cybersecurity and what you can do to try to prevent it and position your bank account to best be protected. So with that, I thank you all for joining, and I'll turn the presentation over to Brian. I think you're muted, Brian.
Thank you, Brandon. Can you hear me now?
Gotcha.
Right, great. Thank you for that introduction, Brandon. I was a little slow on the slide, so I apologize for that. Again, thanks everyone for joining today. It's great to have everyone here. As Brandon discussed, it's this topic of information security, cybersecurity is first and foremost. We hear it every day in the news, as well as we hear it every day. Seems like you get emails, email blasts, social media, etc. of some other bank or institution has been hacked. There's been identity theft that's occurred perhaps within your family, friends, etc. So we're going to talk about that today, some of the best practices, some things you can do to mitigate some of those risks for yourself, and how we can move forward to hopefully be better protected for all of us. So let me So identity theft. So is someone pretending to be you and using your information such as your name, social security number, and credit card number without your permission. Identity theft, as you can see here, I'm going to actually talk about some of the items that Brandon was discussing as it relates to identity theft. And he actually brought up a couple of the topics that were discussed from the FTC or the Federal Trade Commission. And I actually pulled this directly from the Federal Trade Commission's website. So in February of 2019, it was reported, this is actually of this year, there was a 14% increase in reported losses from 2022 to 2023, fairly substantial. And as you can see, the largest category of losses was 4.6 billion in investment scams, as well as 2.7 billion losses in imposter scams. So if we just clue in on this slide here a little bit, you can see here in the center section, this is showing you that increase. So if you look at it from 2021 to 2023, almost $3 billion increase in reported investment scams. And across the top here, you'll see the top fraud, number one, imposters, as Brandon had mentioned, and it goes all the way down to investments and then business and job opportunities. So you can see here that fraud is hitting a whole slew of different topics and categories as it relates to different services. It could be shopping, it could be banking, etc. And then across the bottom here, some of these statistics are pretty crazy. So social media now, the highest overall reported in losses, 1.4 billion. And the highest per person reported in losses of 1480 as the median for phone call scams. So this trend is continuing to go up and up, and we don't see that trend stopping at any point in the near future. So close to home here in Florida, I pulled some statistics as it relates to Florida, and these statistics I'm going to show you are across the entire United States. So third overall ranking is the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Pompano Beach area for the top frauds as it relates to identity theft. And again, that third overall ranking is across the entire United States, not just the state of Florida. Closer to home here, ninth overall in the United States is the Orlando, Kissimmee, Florida, or Sanford area here in Florida. Again, ninth overall in the US, not just in the state of Florida. And then finally, Florida itself ranks third overall as the most vulnerable for identity theft and fraud across the US. So as you can see, the trend here in Florida is extremely high. And it just, I guess, as a reminder that we've got to really, really try to protect ourselves as best we can as we move forward. So how do identity thieves steal an identity? So dumpster diving is still a prevalent way in which they are stealing people's identity. And don't necessarily think of dumpster diving as if you're behind a business or a restaurant or something like that, where you're going to be pulling information out of the garbage. It could be someone at your institution, your business, some personal private information is thrown away discarded in the trash next to you. They pick that up, they take that from you, and use that information to start collecting information on an identity. So just something in the business side to keep a mindful eye on is that you take into account that paper that's actually floating around your offices and it's discarded appropriately. Skimming. So a few years ago, skimming was more prevalent, especially at gas stations. And as you'll recall, there was a requirement by the government that the gas stations had to replace all of their old credit card readers with more secure devices that could not be skimmed. As you use your credit card at the gas station, you'll probably see some of those gas stations have not done that, and there are still some of those potentials out there as it relates to skimming. This would be where they would go into a device and replace that regular credit card reader with a storage device that could read that information off the back of a credit or debit card. And I'm sure many of you have heard about the ability to do that. Also, you're at a restaurant, the waiter takes your credit card, goes back to run the charge. They've got a device back there in the back. Swipe your card, and now they can make credit and debit cards from that device they use to skim your information from the card. This is probably the most prevalent way, is phishing. And I'm sure all of us have heard about phishing. Again, pretending to be a financial institution or company by sending spam or a pop-up message to get your personal information. Change of address, so diverting bills to another location to using a change of address form. This still does happen today and is not as prevalent as phishing, but it does take place every day. And then finally, information compromise. So how often do we hear about this in the news? A medical company, a healthcare company, a credit bureau, somewhere down the line, a institution has been hacked. The financial information, medical information is stored on their servers. That information is compromised, pulled off by the hacker, pulled down, and then used to create your identity from that information. So from that, as we talked about skimming, the idea here would be that they can use that information to open a new credit card. If they've collected information and your identity has been stolen as it relates to a change of address, or if something has been received through the phishing attack, then the idea here is that they can create credit card fraud by opening up a new credit card account in your name. Change the billing address on your card so that you no longer receive those bills, and you're able to see those bogus charges that are coming through from that credit card fraud. Tax fraud, this actually happened to my mother. So her identity was stolen. They actually filed a tax return in her name, and they did create fake dependents for her, trying to inflate the amount so that they could receive the tax return due to that tax fraud on her Social Security number. We're going to talk about this further in the presentation, but this took us about 4 years to unwind it all related to this tax fraud that occurred on her Social Security number when her identity was stolen from her. And then phone or utility fraud, again, opening up a new phone, a wireless account, utility services in your name to create that utility fraud, phone fraud that looks like it's coming from you. Near and dear to all of our hearts, bank fraud, so creating counterfeit checks with your name and account number on it, or perhaps from that skimming exercise we talked about before, cloning your debit card and making an electronic withdrawal from your checking or savings account. And then finally, government fraud. So getting a hold of your driver's license, an official ID, your Social Security number to basically obtain government benefits in your name. So what should we do if your identity is stolen? So first and foremost, you need to place a fraud alert on your credit report. This is the very first significant step that you can do. Here is the information on the screen showing you how to contact those different 3 credit bureaus. And we're going to include a handout that actually has this information on it for you so that you can have it at your are ready if you needed to share that with anyone within your organization or family. Next, you might consider a credit freeze, which is a little bit different than a fraud alert, that you can put a freeze on your credit bureau and set up a password. This will basically give the ability to thaw your credit whenever you need to, if you're going to do a credit check, if you're opening a loan, a credit card, etc., and then freeze that account again so that that particular credit bureau has your account blocked for any new activity. You need to contact your financial institution, close any existing accounts that may have been tampered with, and then they will open new accounts to make sure that that fraud will stop. And then finally, everyone knows to do this. A lot of people don't do it when it happens, but to change your password for those online accounts that have been compromised, that is the single easiest thing you can do after your identity has been compromised. If it was related to tax fraud, you do need to contact the IRS. So this were the steps that we actually ended up going through with my mother. We contacted the Identity Protection Specialized Unit with the IRS, and they informed us that we needed to fill out Form 14039. Again, this is going to be in the handout we're going to provide you. And when you fill out that affidavit, that's going to signal the IRS to generate a PIN for you. And at that point in time, you will not be able to conduct any business with the IRS without utilizing that PIN to verify that you are who you say you are. Back to some of the statistics that we saw with the FTC. So we would highly recommend that you file a complaint with the FTC. We're going to talk about why you want to do that a little bit later in the presentation, but you can call the FTC or visit the website to file a complaint with the FTC that you have that your identity has been stolen. And then finally, you want to file a police report. And the police report, you want to make sure that it is stamped, signed, somehow verified that the police actually have received it and filed it on their side. Sure, you get a copy, because that police report will be helpful for you moving forward when you're disputing the fraud accounts, the debts, etc. And also when you're going to take some preventative measures with the different credit bureaus, which we're going to talk about here shortly. So a fraud alert at the different credit bureaus, you can and should place a fraud alert if your identity has been stolen. And anyone who suspects fraud can place a fraud alert on their credit report. The fraud alert will basically make it much more difficult for someone to open credit in your name, and any new businesses must verify your identity before new credit is issued. So when you do this fraud alert, then the fraud alert on your credit report is going to give you a free copy of your credit report from one of the 3 credit bureaus. So that will enable you to get 3 credit reports, 3 additional credit reports for free from each of the bureaus. The fraud alert will last for 1 year. And after 1 year, you can renew it. There's no cost for you to do this. And to place the fraud alert, you contact one of the 3 credit bureaus from those phone numbers or websites that I provided earlier, Equifax, TransUnion, or Experian. And then you do not have to contact all 3 with this particular alert. Once you contact one of the bureaus, the other 2 must be contacted by the bureau that you file the alert with. An extended fraud alert. Again, an extended fraud alert is only available to people who have had their identity stolen. So that's a little bit different than the fraud alert I explained before. This is that you verified your identity has been stolen and that you have completed an FTC report and or filed a police report. So like a fraud alert, this does make it much more difficult to have credit opened in your name and the business must contact you to verify you are who you say you are. In this instance, now you can get a free copy of your credit report twice a year. And at this point in time, once that extended fraud alert has been placed, the credit bureaus will take you off their marketing list for unsolicited credit insurance offers for up to 5 years, unless you ask them not to. This particular alert will last for 7 years, and hopefully within that 7 years, you've had the issue cleaned up. If you have not, you can refile for another 7 years. There is no cost to have this extended fraud alert put on. And again, just contact one of the three, Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion, and the one that you contact must contact the other two on your behalf. So again, let's talk about a credit freeze. Anyone can place a credit freeze on their account, even if your identity has not been stolen. I have a credit freeze on my account for all 3 credit bureaus, for my wife's account, for my mother's account. Again, this will not allow any credit to get opened until you have thawed that account. The nice thing about this particular type of service is that when the freeze is put on, you're able to basically lift that freeze or thaw that freeze at your will. So if you were to open a new credit card, if you were to open a new auto or apply for a new auto loan, apply for a job that actually required a credit check, renting an apartment, etc., you can actually log on. You'll create a user ID and password. You'll log on to one of the different credit bureau agencies. Let's say you knew that the bank was pulling credit from Experian. You would just log on to Experian. You could then go in and basically put a duration. So you would just wanted that credit freeze to last 1 day, 3 days, a week. Then you could thaw that credit freeze for that time period, and that credit freeze then will automatically expire, and your account will go from a status of thawed back to frozen, so that no other credit can be opened in your name. So the credit freeze lasts until you remove it. There is no charge. And in this instance, you do have to place that freeze on each of the different credit bureaus, and you'll set up a particular account for each one of those credit bureaus. So now talking about some cybersecurity. These are terms that I'm sure many of you have heard of. I just kind of wanted to set a baseline here for some of the items we're going to be talking about. So malware. Malware is developed as harmful software that invades and corrupts your computer or your network with the intent of stealing information or just sabotaging the business or entity. A virus is a type of malware that self-replicates by inserting code into software programs. And the idea is here to have that virus spread from one computer to another within the organization, your home, etc. Ransomware, malware that encrypts the victim's data, and then the hacker demands that you pay to have that ransomware lifted. At that point in time, if you were to pay, they would send you some type of decryption key to restore access to that data. And then finally, spyware. So spyware collects information and data on the device the user is using without you knowing. So this could be a keylogger where the spyware is injected into the device, the laptop, the mobile device, the tablet. And as you're typing on your computer, the spyware would collect the keystrokes to basically try to gain access to your user ID and password to a bank site, an investment site, etc. Or it could be that the spyware takes over your device and takes over, say, your camera and starts recording video of you so that they can capture that video and use that to blackmail you or use that for some other malicious intent. So again, phishing is still the most prevalent way. It happens every day. and is the easiest form in which the attackers are going after businesses today. So phishing is basically a way of attempting to grab username, passwords, financial details, and they masquerade itself as a trustworthy source. You can see here in this diagram that it starts off with the attacker creating a fake web page. Then step 2, the attacker sends that link to the victim. Step 3, the victim opens the fake web page and submits the information. And then the attacker collects that personal information from the victim. So phishing comes from the term of alluding to baiting you with the goal of getting the victim to bite on that particular email. And it's typically carried out email spoofing, instant messaging, or telephone solicitation. There are some new methods that have come in recently that we're going to talk about in a bit as it relates to phishing and different phishing techniques. So spear phishing is a type of phishing where it is more of a targeted attack. So they are focusing on a particular high-profile individual, a high net worth individual, a particular company, where they're tailoring the particular phishing email towards that particular target. It could be the CEO of a company or business. It could be the CFO that controls the money within the business, etc. And so that spear phishing is targeting that particular individual to try to glean that information from them. So phishing attacks are evolving now. It's not just check fraud scams, online drug pharmacies, etc. You can see here that the attacks are across the board now. From this diagram here, or this bar graph, Microsoft in 2023 was the largest, with PayPal, Facebook, DocuSign, Intuit, etc., making its way down. So the phishing attacks are evolving so that it's not so much of just a random attack, but they're using what appears to be as it's coming from these different companies that we use on a daily basis to attempt to glean that information from the victim. So these attacks are increasing because they still are effective, even though we all know about phishing and have heard it time and time again, because we are busy. We are running 1,000 miles an hour with emails we get every day, with text messages we get every day, and something comes through and we just want to address it. And in that attempt to trying to address that particular email or problem or whatever it may be, we click the link and we've been phished. I mean, let's be honest, humans are gullible and curious, and we will click those links because we are so busy. For the attack, it's hardly any cost to them. So the difficulty and sophistication may be low, but the volume of phishing attacks that they send out, they realize that if we send out 1 million of these, the likelihood of 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 clicking on it is probably pretty good. And then the information that is gathered now has increased because of the popularity of social media. The amount of information that is on Facebook accounts, whether it's for a business or an individual or a family, that information on social media has become very prevalent and much easier to target some of those attacks related to mining some of that data from social media. So ultimately here, they're trying to gain value from that sensitive information about you or your organization so that they can phish you. So in this next slide, I'm going to give you an example. This is a real world example of a phish that came through from what appears to be Nacha, which is an electronic payment system that most financial institutions use. And this phish came through, and you can see in this particular example, it looks like there's a PDF document that has been attached to this canceled transfer or rejected transaction email. And for this particular instance, I hovered my mouse over it, which you can see just to the right of that .pdf. And you can see there was a tiny link there. That tiny URL then pointed back to a malicious website that when we investigated this particular website would have actually injected a virus onto the individual's PC. And at that point in time, working at a financial institution, we could have compromised the entire network of the bank. So it just would have been easy to click on this, off to that website. That website then downloads the payload. That payload gets injected into the PC, and then that has the point of being distributed across the entire organization. This is a more complex example. This is a spear phishing example. So this attacker created 2 fake email addresses. This is one of those fake email addresses. So he crafted this email stating basically that your invoice is ready. He sent that email then to his second fake email address. The second fake email address that he created says, "I apologize for the delay, but the invoice was buried deep in my inbox." And now I've copied our accounting department on it. He then forwards that second fake email to the accounting department and to a legitimate individual at the accounting department. They've spoofed the individual's name here, asking for the money to be processed today. So in this example, the attacker creates 2 emails, sends the information back and forth between those 2 emails, and then forwards it to the actual company's accounting department. So again, a nice little trick to try to trick someone into sending money out that was fraud. One of the evolutions of phishing is now called quishing. And quishing or QR phishing is a new type of cybersecurity in which the attacker is using QR codes to redirect victims to either visiting a website or downloading malicious content. So as you all know, a QR code is a 2-dimensional barcode that can be scanned by a camera or a reader application. The attacker embeds a link into that QR code with the malicious website. Your QR codes are then placed in a phishing email. It could be placed on Facebook or any social media account. It could be a food menu, a printed flyer. And then once you scan that mobile device is redirected, the web browser is redirected to that malicious website. And that malicious website then is prompting the user to click on something for malicious content or asking for your credentials for your bank account, personal information, etc. In this particular instance, some of the defenses that are in place for personal devices as well as for businesses like secure email gateways don't necessarily, this could bypass those conventional defenses because many of them see the QR code as a meaningless image. So it may be worth asking your IT department or asking your technology guru, so to speak, if at your business, if this is something they're on the lookout for. Again, another type of phishing, smishing or SMS phishing, is a type of cybersecurity in which the attacker redirects victims using SMS text messages and forcing them to visit a malicious website that has content or is going to request for information. So the attacker then embeds that malicious website directly into the SMS message on your device, your mobile phone, your tablet. This will work on most mobile devices, and most SMS messaging systems also can convert that SMS message to an email. So this will also work on most email platforms. And then once you tap or click it, the mobile device is redirected automatically, trying to get you to download that malicious content. They can ask you to click on it and ask you for the login credentials as we discussed. Like QR codes, this can often bypass those secure email gateways because they're not looking for those meaningless images. So some of the types of attacks that we'll see through smishing is the account verification scams, the lottery scams, prize scams, tech support scams, bank fraud alerts. I've got an example here of one. Here your transfer failed for your deposit, and you need to go and click this link so that you can rectify this particular situation. Tax scam. So here the IRS is filing a lawsuit against you. For more information, call this number. So again, another way to phish you through the phone number. So you get the phish via smishing, but then they fall back on a phone number to try to get you to release that information they're looking for. A service cancellation, parcel delivery scams. That your FedEx, USPS package is waiting for delivery or can't verify the delivery address, please click this link so that we can continue on with your parcel. This actually just happened to my wife yesterday. And then an SMS message that your download through the Google Play Store, your download through the Apple Store did not complete. Please click this link so you can complete your download from the Google Play or Apple Store. So let's talk about how the trends are looking for mobile. So for 2022, the average number of unique malware threats grew by 51%. And this is a little bit of a scary thought that on an Android device, 1 out of 20 Android devices had malware on it. You can see here global mobile devices, cyber attacks grew by 2.2 million in 2022. And in 2023, Kaspersky, which is a network security firm, published their results. And this is just one network security firm. So in 2023, quarter one, 4.9 million attacks against mobile devices that they blocked. Q2, they blocked 5.7. Q3, 8.3 million. And then they announced that they detected that the cyber criminals had unleashed 411,000 files a day towards mobile devices. So what we're seeing here is that trend is continuing to increase as more and more users are attached to their mobile device, their tablet. They're going to try to go after the path of least resistance. And since you're on your mobile device all the time, they're going to start focusing more and more on that. I anticipate that a lot of this has been on the consumer side. I'm anticipating that we're going to see, as more and more people are using their mobile devices for work activities, you're going to see more and more targeted attacks towards the business side. So some tips, safeguard you. is to install antivirus software and to regularly update it. My recommendation would be for your personal devices at home is that you turn on automatic download of updates. In your business that are running a networking system, your IT administrators are not going to want to do this. They're going to want to be able to investigate patches that are coming out to make sure that those patches that get installed on the server and network side aren't going to break one of the applications within the business. But on the client side or your personal side at your home, I would recommend that you install automatic updates. So understanding some of the security features of the software you're using, including the firewalls, turning on firewall settings on your personal devices, going through your mobile device, looking through the different privacy settings that exist, whether it's on an iPhone or Android, and then encryption options. If you're at a Starbucks, if you're at a McDonald's, if you're out working, utilizing a VPN whenever possible to establish connectivity. If you do decide to use one of those free Wi-Fi offers out there, that you utilize a VPN to protect the data that's going back and forth between your device and the servers that you're connecting to. So unique passwords, I bet you if I asked everyone to raise their hands who had a unique password for every different account they had, I'm guessing no one would raise their hands. All of us seem to have more and more passwords with more and more different services that we utilize. But what we can use is a password manager to create those complex passwords for us so that you don't have to remember that password and you're able to create a unique password for every logon that you do have. Multi-factor authentication. So I turn this on for everything I possibly can. It does slow me down. It puts a speed bump in the way, but I want to ensure that all of the different services that I am using, if I can enable multi-factor, I do, to give me that peace of mind that I'm logging in, I'm authenticating as me, and I can submit that code into the service to make sure that I am secure from that standpoint. So setting up a passcode or a PIN on your device, even if it's not mandatory. My mother got a new iPhone and she wanted to refuse setting up any type of password on it. I told her that was not allowed. So if you have a device that you can establish a passcode or PIN, please set one up. And then with smartphones, if you choose to use the Apple Pay or Android Pay, paying with one of those apps would be a better option than just swiping your credit card, because those different services provide tokenization and different levels of security where they're not passing your actual financial information, they're passing a token. For businesses, consider having a dedicated PC for accessing, your most sensitive information, online bank accounts, etc. Limiting employee access to sensitive data and information. So not everyone has all of the keys to the candy store, so to speak, and creating some type of segregation of duty between those employees. Uninstalling software that's no longer in use. We tried to do this at the financial institutions I worked at. If you're not needing to use Java, uninstall Java. If you're not needing to use a particular software application, uninstall it. It's just one less thing to patch and one less vulnerability. And then encouraging your IT department, if you don't have a patch management system in place that can deploy patches in a timely manner across the entire organization, that you look at implementing something like that, so that when those zero-day vulnerabilities come out that need to be patched, you can patch the machines that exist on the entire network. And that is it for me. So with that, I will gladly turn this over to Tracy Smith so she can talk about some of the items as it relates to the bank.
Yes, thank you, Brian. This next part of the presentation, we're really going to focus on actual cases and customer impact that we've seen here at the bank. As you listen to Brian's presentation, you think, oh, I know that. Oh, I know. We won't click on that. Well, these are live examples of customers that have actually been victims of fraud. And you think that it's not going to happen to you, but it might happen to your company. A few things that I'll say that will kind of replicate what Brian had said was, everybody needs to slow down, be thoughtful, look at red flags. Don't take any kind of email notification of any payment change, and then look at setting alerts, and then also any kind of fraud control services you can, especially on your business account. This is our first case study. This is from a law firm, and it's here locally. And everything that we say not to do happens. Email came in from a fraudster. The individual at the law firm took a wire change, instruction wire change via email. They did not call back to verify, and those funds went out. Sorry, and that firm had a $135,000 loss. Now the bank, even though we call back and verify, we verify those instructions, but those instructions were fraudulent. So what the employee should have done is they should have called and verified with their customer or their vendor, wherever they're sending out these funds. They call the phone number on file that you have, not in the email that you get, but call and verify those funds. So this actually happened to one of our customers recently. The next one is a little different payment rail, same concept. Our customer has a vendor emails employee. They see the email, they recognize the email, they think they're comfortable with it. Vendor asked, hey, will you please update my my ACH instructions? I changed bank accounts. That employee did not verify with the vendor with a phone number on file to check to see if that payment instructions was valid. It was fraudulent, and that company had a loss of $45,000. So these are pretty big numbers. They impact a business, and all you have to do is have your employees slow down and think about what they're doing. Anytime here at the bank, we are teaching our bankers or have taught our bankers that we always call our customers back. If there's a address change, a new signer, a new any change to that account, we are picking up the phone and talking to our customers. And it also offers great customer service. This third study, or this third case study, is similar to the first one. Title company, same thing happened. And I've worked with title companies for a very long time, and this, calling back on wire changes has always been the procedure that needs to take place. But again, this happened again. The fraudster emailed an employee, a closing employee, that email was then used to change the wiring instructions, and this company actually lost $305,000. So these are really impactful numbers to our customers and our small businesses. And there are a few other ways. Old-fashioned check fraud, as we all think that checks are going away, check fraud is still very much, we see it every day. We could actually have probably a full hour session on the fraud that we see here at the bank every day. A lot of it is check fraud. We see a lot of mail fraud rings, where mail is stolen from a particular office building. Checks are then collected. They are then altered, they're washed, they're actually produce other counterfeit checks. So this is happening every day, and we always educate our customers on our fraud control services. Pretty much, I recommend any business, whether you're issuing checks or not, to have check positive pay on your account. Basically, that allows the bank to know what checks you're issuing. We do work with different software companies to get those issue files sent to us, or we actually will help your employees map that file to the bank So it has gotten a lot easier than it back in the old days when Positive Pay was kind of a pain for the customer. Now it is still an extra step, but it protects your account and you don't have to go through the process of closing accounts, dealing with fraud, dealing with affidavits, dealing with having to make police reports when there's actually fraud on the account. So this is highly recommended at any time on any business account. What I mirror with check Positive Pay is ACH Positive Pay. This allows you to filter and whitelist only the approved ACH debits that you want to have come through the account. So this will say you want to pay your energy bill, Duke Energy can come in and debit that account, that's fine. But anytime that you issue a check or release account information, whether it's wire instructions, ACH instructions, or a check, your routing number and account number is on there. So a fraudster could come in, have ACH with a different bank, plug in your routing number and account number, and ACH debit your account without you knowing until you reconcile. And it's really important for businesses to understand that the bank only has 24 hours. Once that fraud has happened, we have 24 hours to try to get those funds back. It's a very short window. With ACH Positive Pay, it allows you to monitor those ACH debits and then also block anybody that it might be fraudulent, or set limits as to how much money you want that vendor to be able, or that debit to be able to pull out of your account. So that's a nice feature as well. Some other forms of fraud. Now, we don't have actual case studies on this, but we see it quite often. I actually had a customer that I received an email from. It looked just like my customer's email. It actually was his email. His email was taken over, asking to add a new controller on as a signer. We've had this happen a couple times, but this is one that I've actually lived through. I felt like as a banker, I should know if a controller, a CFO, a signer, anybody is added to one of my customers' accounts, because that means there's a change in their business. So I called up my customer and I said, hey, we're adding a new controller. What's going on over there? And he said, absolutely not. That is not an email that I sent to you. It was compromised. What can happen? That signer can be added, especially if the bank does electronic signature cards. They provide their own social, they provide their own ID, they provide everything to the bank, and they can be added onto a signer if your banker isn't checking and calling you back. It is the bank's policy to call and speak with our customers, again, with a phone number on file, not a phone number and an email, to make sure these changes are really being requested by the appropriate person. Another item that we sometimes forget to talk about, but I do think it's very important for businesses to understand. If you have ATM cards or debit cards on your business account, there's different regulations that cover the business side of those ATM and debit cards, and it's not the same as consumers. So it's very important for businesses to really think through, is it important for me to have this debit card? Should I have this debit card? And who should have access to a debit card? Should I allow, my bookkeeper to have access, or my office manager to have access to a debit card to get petty cash? You really need to think through that, because regulations are not the same for consumers and for us, for businesses. So there's a very small portion that is actually covered if you have fraud. If you want more information on that, we'll be happy to send that out to you. You can just reach out to your banker. So it's important for you guys to think through that before adding ATM and debit cards to your account. You would rather look at, it'd be better for you to look at any kind of credit card or purchasing card platform for that. This is what I mentioned before, where it takes, if you do have an ACH debit that you need a dispute, you need to reach your bank within 24 hours for us to try to get those funds back. ACH payment rail is a little bit different than a wire rail. We do have some time to potentially go back to the originating bank to get those funds back, but these fraudsters are smart. They know what they're doing. Typically those funds are well and gone, or they're not waiting that 24 hours, and that either the receiving bank or the originating bank, they don't have the funds in there any longer for us to retrieve. That's all I have for today. I'm going to hand it over to Brandon, and we're right on time. So thank you, and I'm going to hand it back over to you, Brandon.
Thank you, Tracy and Brian. And as Tracy mentioned, we could spend hours talking about all different types of fraud. Recently we've seen SunBiz being changed on some of our clients' accounts, where the fraudsters are going in and trying to change SunBiz to open fraudulent accounts. We're hearing stories about artificial intelligence and the impact that that's going to play on making the fraudsters seem more realistic or even look more realistic if there's a video conference. So the best thing that we can do is constantly try to be educated on how we can prevent these things from happening. And as Brian mentioned, most of these circumstances could have been prevented with the proper training. So we can't solve all of the problems today, but hopefully today's session gave everybody a little bit of an overview on the most common types of fraud and maybe some tips and tricks that they can use in their business. So as mentioned, we are going to be sending a follow-up link to the presentation that can be shared, and we'll also include a one-page handout of some quick tips and tricks that you can leave by the computer, share with your employees, and hopefully that's of value to you as well. So we thank everybody for joining the presentation today, and we hope to see you at our Q2 event, which we'll be announcing soon. Thanks, everybody.